Still 6:05, and I will now call to order the February 13th, 2017 meeting of the East Hampton Conservation Commission. The meeting is being recorded. Gonna continue to pass around the sign-in list so folks can sign in. We are all present. Counted for.
Move to suspend the rules. Sorry. Just wanted to do that.
Commissioner
I was
Buckett
reading.
has been reading Robert's Rules
Yeah, I
of
was-
Order.
I think we have to do that. Do we have a sign in? We do.
We do, it's been going around.
Sorry.
Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items? All right, we're gonna move along. We also have no public hearings or meetings. We received today, I believe, a request for certificate of compliance for 238 Northampton Street.
Oh, there's one right there.
I engaged Sherman and Frederick to do the as-built plans, and they started on them immediately after your last meeting. And they completed them on Friday, and I went and picked them up thinking I was gonna bring them up here on Friday so that you guys could have them for the weekend. Then it dawned on me that the town offices aren't open on Fridays. So I brought it up first thing this morning. Sorry for the lateness in getting it to you.
It's okay, we need to post these to our agendas.
Oh.
So this is just as well.
Okay.
So this will be on our February 27th meeting agenda. And despite the fact that we have over a foot of snow on the ground, would folks like to try to schedule a site visit before that meeting? Because I don't think it's gonna get any better after that meeting. I mean, so technically, we're required to do a site visit.
Okay.
So this is the Valley Medical Building property, the former Zoe, former Bloodline, former something before that, I'm sure. So do folks have availability to schedule this on the weekend? Okay, so we're not gonna schedule around you. So, and I'm actually gone the second weekend, and will not be here the 27th either, but we'll talk about that after. So I think, do folks have availability this weekend?
The 18th doesn't work for me.
I'm sorry, the
Does
18th?
not work, but
How about the
I can-
17th?
That's probably not good either.
Yeah, either. This is the bad end of the table.
I'm fine, I got nothing. I can't do Saturday, but I could do Sunday.
Probably the opposite.
How many people have to be on
Let's go with two. There's no.
Okay.
I can go at some separate time also,
Okay.
so it's not critical.
I guess I could go somewhere. Early is better.
On Saturday? Could you do earlier on Saturday?
Yeah, that would be best for me, actually.
All right.
So,
Julie, could you do earlier Saturday?
I have to leave by 8 at the latest, so I'm guessing no. I don't think you wanna get out there earlier than that. And I don't
Could you-
particularly.
You're up.
Come on.
is the sun up now?
Yes.
Yes. You drive for you know these things. So do you wanna say, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be a terribly exhaustive site visit.
But 6:30 AM, right?
Do it and I will not be
Please
there.
don't.
All right,
7:45.
yeah,
Saturday.
let's say 7:45. Are
I'll be there.
the offices open
Um,
on Saturday morning?
I'm sorry, let me just shut this up. They are until noon, I believe. They have some
Okay.
walk-in urgent care type stuff.
But we're not, if we.
Oh,
park
no,
out
you'll
the
be
way
fine,
before
yeah,
urgent
no,
care?
it's,
Okay.
it's sparsely attended on Saturday.
Okay, so, and the area right behind the building is where we are, especially the out wall. Okay.
We don't have those drawings electronically.
We don't, but could we receive a PDF?
Yeah, we can get
That
a
would be
PDF.
tremendously helpful. If you email it to conservation@easthampton.org, we can distribute it to commission members.
The address now says.
238 Northampton Street, it's the Valley Medical Building, the classroom in East Hampton, Savings Banks new building. Okay,
Do you
so.
wanna pick me up?
Sure.
7:45?
7:40, 40.
7:40.
7:40.
No, the meeting's at 7:45, we'll pick her up at 7:40.
Oh.
Okay, so, and then this will be, on the agenda, for discussion on February 27th, 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay, can you attend? Because I can't, I've got to be at a
Well-
planning board meeting in Long Meadow for another project that I'm.
We'll make sure that we, Dawn or I are right there on Saturday morning at
That would be
7:45.
great. Please let us know if you're not going to make it,
Okay, yeah.
that way we won't wait.
Right, absolutely. So that's
Okay.
the 17th, right?
Yep,
Isn't it the 18th?
that's Sunday.
Mine's the Saturday.
I'm off. You guys
Yeah,
are-
it's Saturday the 18th.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
And I'll notify the tenant that there'll be.
There'll be people there?
Folks up there.
Okay.
So
We'll
you,
just-
you're,
we'll be
you're not
outside.
gonna be there for long, right? Sounds like?
No, don't anticipate it.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So, moving on, we have no emergency certifications, we have no updates on any of the enforcement actions. Open space updates, FPJLS worksheet status.
So I've been working on getting estimates for, the project. And I have estimates for everybody, including Jess and somewhere in here. And then, I just wanted to talk about the different steps of the project. So I have some proposals of what to do after the trees that Russell has identified have been removed, it's been brush hogged, and the pruning has been set in motion. So, I don't have enough copies for everyone. So the full cost of, based on the estimates that I received, the full cost for tree removal, brush hogging, and pruning would be right around $9,000, yeah, $10,000 would probably be a fair bet. So it seems like that would make sense, and feel free to weigh in on this as like phase one of the project, that we try to get that happening as soon as possible. I don't know how possible that is. What's the deadline for CPA again?
I think the next application is due in March.
Okay. So if we could try to get that part set for then. And then as far as the next steps, I just made a list of different pieces. And actually it's occurring to me that the invasive species removal piece maybe should be part of phase one. So sorry about that. So it seems like that's sort of a necessary piece to put in the initial grant.
So, invasive species removal, when I contacted Politan, they gave me like a whole management plan. Not only like would they go out and like look around and see what they have to take out, but also like what the cost would be. Like, say we use volunteers, they didn't put their actual labor costs yet, but they just let me know like they would pretty much do the plan.
Is that the $2,000? Is that where I got that from? Cause I don't remember.
Yeah, I like randomly went in there.
Oh, okay, great.
I
I know, I was like, awesome.
Yeah, I just like dropped it in.
So that's 2,000 for the plan, and then assuming that it would be volunteers that actually do the removal.
Yeah, it's not the labor cost, but, yeah.
So the Conway School had suggested doing like a mile trail, which would be about $20,000. And then up to $125,000 for an ADA trail. Another possibility for what to do with the project would be like an edible forest garden, which would be around $15,000. I got excited about the idea of an outdoor exercise park, which is like $10,000. So I'm just going through these ideas. I think actually the idea that makes the most sense, which we haven't talked about, because is this last one, which I'll explain in a second, but the big question has continued to be how do we maintain whatever we do with that land, particularly because it has high needs apple trees on it that we can't just like prune and forget about. And that is a model that they've used in Northampton, and I have the lease agreement, but would be to lease it to a farmer or farmers or some sort of group that want to maintain and use the project. And I don't know if there's a history of doing that in East Hampton. Feast Hampton, the group that Ben Lesko is part of, the person who originally brought this project to us, is definitely interested in,
Are they the ones who did all the little edible gardens, like by the bike path down by the brewery
no,
and like behind the library? Okay.
that's another
I know what you're
group,
talking
I think.
Cool. So what are they, what's the least project in Northampton?
Oh, so the project I have the lease for is Montview Farm, which they leased it and farmed it and had a CSA.
Oh.
And so I just have the legal language that they used for that, and it was like a $300 a year lease, so very inexpensive. And then there were conditions about, obviously, there was a wetland on that property too, so conditions about how they use the land, and things like that. So Feast Hampton is definitely interested, and they would actually be, they're happy to do the pruning. And then they were thinking they would like decide what to do with it, and they would want it to be a community use property. But the model that Northampton has used is to have, like, to put it out as an opportunity for farmers or community groups, and then we would receive applications and review them and decide who we would want to use. So it seems like that answers a lot of the questions of phase 2, because we would hopefully find someone or a group of people who would take over phase 2, and we wouldn't have to worry about maintenance.
So what's the cost of the design? Cause I don't see that listed in here, so hiring, is that incorporated in that $20,000 to $125,000 for the trail?
For the trail design, that would be incorporated in that.
So that includes the design costs?
Yeah, and that is an expertise that I have as well, so that's a little bit, I mean, I don't know exactly what we wanna look at with that, like, I would be happy to lay it out and do the work, do some of the work with volunteers. The only problem is tools and things like that, which I could maybe get to borrow. But I don't know if it makes more sense if we do the trail to just
But that
put
would
it out
be
to bid and have
if-
it be done.
If we didn't do the leasing to a farmer, right?
Yeah.
Those are two different options, not one and the same.
Are they mutually, do they have to be mutually exclusive?
I don't think so. I mean,
Oh,
when I
okay.
talked to Ben and Libby, who are the two people who are sort of the main people at East Hampton, they would be interested in there being a trail there, and they still wanna like design what their proposal would be, but they were thinking of a trail and then different, like as an educational community fruit garden that people could harvest from and stuff like that.
So the leased areas, is that kind of like, almost like a community garden? Would you like dictate out like the different areas people can lease? Or is it just like one person leases the entire area?
I think it would be the whole parcel.
Okay.
And that could be something if we go forward with that, and the applications, it would make sense to have, if the applications are such that you could use the space or something like that. So, I don't know what the interest would look like.
What is the exercise park idea?
Oh, you know those like outdoor exercise parks with like elliptical machines that are metal that you can use outside?
We do have an exercise park already, Sentinel Side Park,
Oh.
there's one that exists.
It's known as the playground for adults, me and my family.
Yeah.
It's got monkey bars, it's got like a jump thing.
Is that what they're really called at that age?
Adults?
No, monkey bars.
Oh.
That's the one that's right by.
Yeah.
Behind,
That age,
like,
that level.
Where the
It's by the-
amphitheater is.
The band shell, yeah.
There's an exercise at that one?
It's
Well,
it's
there-
like
there's-
playground.
Yeah.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're
It's
just
like a
going by it
thing
without really paying
on-
attention,
You
you're
don't
like, there's a
realize it?
playground there, but
Okay.
then when you look close, you're like, I hope I could ever actually use this.
That looks like a big playground. And that, it doesn't, that parcel I think doesn't necessarily make sense for that, cause it seems like it should be a place where there's a lot of, traffic. So it's perfect that it's at Millside Park, we can just cross that idea off the list. Anyway, so I don't know how, if we wanna start talking about phase 2 now, or if we just wanna focus on phase 1, if phase 1 even makes sense to people, if people wanna
Well, I
weigh in
think
on that.
phase 1 is the direction we've been headed.
Yeah, phase 1 looks doable, I mean, it's not that expensive.
So the question is, I guess, if So if you're asking for, well, now 12,000, right, with the invasive species removal?
Mm-hmm.
So, but plus contingency, so let's say 15 total, right? Would be the total project cost for our maintenance. So how much do you wanna ask the CPA? And CPA really, they want matches, they don't really like to pay for the full cost, so,
How much do we have?
I was just about to tell you. So there's two different accounts, there's one that's specific for Echodale properties only.
Right.
And there's $16,200 in that account right now. The other one is a more general open space account to be used at other open space locations, and there's about $14,500 in that account.
I mean, since this is Echodale, it would make sense to not pull from
The other one.
the general open space account. So,
I agree. So the question is, would you want
What's the
to
match?
request 10,000 from CPA and put a $5,000 match from your accounts? I mean, you can also use, under the CPA process, in kind, so if volunteers were to be used for the invasive species removal, that could also be considered part of the match, even though it's more of an in-kind match than a cash match. So,
Does CPA like to see a 50-50, or do they not?
Any match is great, but sometimes it's not as much as 50-50. Sometimes it's even more. You know, even CPA is sometimes the smallest percentage that goes in for a project. But I think that's a reasonable ratio. to,
50-50
no,
or
say,
2-1?
we put in, 5,000 out of the Echodale and ask for 10. I don't think we're gonna use all that based on the numbers you're looking at.
Mhm.
right, whatever you don't use, you can just turn back to CPA
Goes right
and
back.
give it back into the accounts, so.
And I don't think it makes sense if, since we do have preliminary costs on some ideas for the next step, it doesn't make sense to, it seems like we would be going back.
It doesn't, I don't hear a solid project idea yet,
No,
honestly,
but
for
I'm,
that second phase, so.
right, but we
yeah.
have some ideas and there are costs associated with them, so I don't think it makes sense to go 50-50 at this point.
No, cause
Save
you're gonna
some
have to
money
use,
for
and this is one-time money, this is not money that's being replenished at all.
Mhm.
This is money that was part of the fundraising effort to purchase Echodale
Mhm.
several years ago, and so this is it, so once this money is gone,
Mhm.
it's gone.
So because we don't have a clear idea for phase two, even though we had talked about putting together a full plan and going to CPA, we're thinking that we should just go with phase one, is that correct?
I would.
Yeah, because that's a tangible project that we can,
Delineate.
otherwise,
Start
you're
and
gonna
finish.
have to have all that
Figured out.
understood.
If you don't have the details figured out before you go to CPA, you'll get creamed. So
Okay.
you need to really know what your project idea is, to know exactly what the costs are associated with that project idea. And including design, if you do want to go with somebody like Conservation Works. And, the long-term maintenance of that, if the idea is to have a leasing idea, then, we need to go to the mayor, we need to propose this to the mayor. She needs to be on board with whatever you're proposing. This, even though the commission is sort of the manager of this property, she needs to be okay with whatever you're proposing. So you need to have a good solid project idea that she's gonna get behind before you even go to CPA. So-
Including for phase one.
No, I think phase one, I mean, this
Okay.
is like maintaining the property, this is
Okay.
deferred
Okay.
maintenance basic,
Okay.
this is what's happened here. So this is bringing the project up to, or the area up to a standard that it needs to be at in order to move forward with whatever the second phase is. And there's this idea that it's either going to be a trail or there's a lot of ideas that are floating out there. The commission hasn't figured out what it is gonna be yet,
Right.
but.
In order to do anything.
But in order to do anything, you've
we
gotta
need
do
to
this first, so
Great.
this is sort of the first phase, and that's how I would pitch it with CPA.
It also feels like this is somewhat pressing in that Russell has expressed the concern about those trees and how they're impacting his orchard. He did send another email in response to questions I have where he seemed even more stressed about it.
What
And he
time of
wrote here.
year do we wanna do the tree removal and brush clearing? Is that a winter frozen ground?
I'm
time?
pretty sure they said they could do it any time.
I think the question would be access,
Right, that's,
because we wouldn't want to,
be driving through the wetland too much and,
You wouldn't drive through the wetland.
Right.
You'd have to like,
Go
it
through
sounds,
part
but
of
it
the
sounds like
wetland.
Russell would
No, but some of the trees are
allow.
in the, some of the things that need
True,
to be
but they
tended to are
could-
in the wetland, that's the problem.
Right.
Yeah,
But
but we
they're not-
wouldn't, by the time we got this all sorted out, we'd be beyond that window.
Well, that's right, we're not gonna catch this winter, if we need to have frozen
No.
ground, it's gonna be.
Well, especially if we're gonna use CPA funding,
Right.
it's not gonna happen.
Really? We can't just get that through me?
You can, if you submit it by 3/2, you could get a vote by May 18th.
Mhm.
So you're into one
So,
other.
do we think we could pull a draft together?
And that's just a vote from the CPA.
Right, and it still has to
That
go.
doesn't even include the finance subcommittee
Yes,
and the
still
full city
2 months
council
after
vote.
that for
So you
funding.
still have another month at least after that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I just want to clarify that.
So,
And they didn't specify a time, I think I'm pretty sure they said they could do it anytime. I guess with the brush hogging, we wanna make sure that it doesn't conflict with.
We also need to clear with procurement, you know, I don't think we can just hire, I know that you got price quotes because you need somewhere to start, but
Yeah.
just so they understand that they're not the guaranteed contractor by any means.
Right, yeah. I think I just said to them, we'll let you know when it goes out to bid.
Yes.
what is, so since we're under $10,000, the price quote process is getting a certain
No,
number?
You're at
not. We're
15 now.
We're at 15.
But, I mean, we're not going to the same
Okay.
entity for all these three things, right?
You can't split it up though, right?
No,
You
you
can't-
can't split
you
the bid.
You
Don't
can't.
split the bid. No.
So
So
you
we'll
mean-
ask-
I
mean,
mean,
one
one contractor has to do all of the work.
You
Well, then
can't,
then it doesn't
you
work.
can't even put it out to bid unless you have the funds secure under the city procurement rules. So you need to first go to CPA, you need to get the funds secured. Once the CPA is through, then an RFP can be put together, and then that RFP can be released. If the RFP, we're gonna take the lowest bidder. So if you've got somebody who's coming in at $8,000, and somebody else is coming in
Then I
at
think
12.
we should take the invasive species out, because there's no way that the entity that comes in to do the tree removal is going to be the best qualified person to do the invasive species.
It can be a separate person, we can't just hide the money into 3 different accounts, correct?
I'd have to talk to procurement.
Okay,
about
'cause I think it can be a separate-
They can sub it out.
Right,
I
it
mean,
could be a
they could
separate-
hi- They could, they
Which
could-
then jacks the price up.
Yes, exactly, that's what I'm.
That's, I mean, I understand where you're both coming from, but it,
Then there would
Yeah.
need to be, it would need to be drafted in such a way that, again, I need to talk to procurement, but if you need to draft it in such a way that the contractors can work together, or they would need to be staged in such a way that they understand who's in there first and who's in there second. And so if that's the case, then if it's a timing thing, and say you do the invasive stuff after the pruning, then you can do that bid separately 6 months from then.
well, and the invasive piece that would be going out to bid is the management plan, not the implementation of it. It's what's out there and what are the management techniques and how do they get applied,
Mhm.
as opposed to, and then going in with volunteers and.
Are you sure that you can get the volunteer mass to do what needs to be done?
I don't even know what's out there for.
I know there's multiflora, but I didn't really see much in the fields where the wetlands were.
Yeah, I mean, I would think if we're going to CPA, we would want to know what, we would probably want that work to be done, so we want to budget for that. I would think we'd have a good chance of success with volunteers, just in terms of getting it all together and making it happen and everything like that.
I mean, it could happen. I would, I think there's enough people in this community that care about the environment, that I think that if the marketing was done right and the word was put out in such a way that you could get a good, solid group of people, but somebody would need to train them on how to remove properly and make sure that they're removing the right plants and not the wrong plants, and, so there's some management to managing the volunteers. It's more than just getting the bodies on site, but training them to do it correctly. And so if one of you is able to do that, or if you're relying on whoever's doing the management plan to do that, that's, something to think about, and that might change the price for that.
So this multiflora might be best removed by the people who are doing the brush clearing and pulling those things out while they have that piece of equipment sitting there.
The other one is honeysuckle that I had written down.
Maybe it's the sort of thing you should do the invasive species, like mapping first, and then you could do the brush hogging
Yeah.
after, so you know like where the invasives are that you should be concerned about.
Yeah, we wouldn't, I don't know, would brush hogging spread seeds of some things sometimes.
Okay, so then the idea then is that the invasives process would need to be done first, before even the tree removal could even happen, is what I'm hearing.
or at least have the invasive species plan in place.
But then who's gonna make the decision, like, that's why I almost in a way, kinda see the bid being, I see where you're coming from, that they're two separate things, but if you have a general contractor that can do both and can see how the two pieces kind of relate to one another, I don't know, it just seems more efficient in my head.
Does that exist though?
No,
I
well,
have no idea.
that's it, I agree, it would be more efficient, I don't know if that person exists.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Well,
there's tree
they would
removal
just, they would
people that have
hire,
Apple
you know, the
expertise
different things
either.
out,
Yeah.
but we probably plan on adding 15 or 20% for that.
Yeah, I almost feel like Paulson could do it. When I talked to him, he's like, yeah. I mean, I don't
Well,
think he'd be the
that's
first
his
one.
business.
Yeah, but I don't, like, obviously he knows what happens if you cut down multi-floor rows.
But
It's
if he,
like
but if they were
going-
tagged and all he went in there is and pulled them out, then
Yeah.
I mean, if we got the funding, we could probably put together one RFP that said, you know,
No, I don't.
we're soliciting a, you know, contractor experienced in, you know, these three things to develop an invasive species management plan and then remove, you know, diseased
Trees.
trees
Yeah.
and train volunteers on invasive species removal and,
That seems like the wild card right there.
yeah.
To me,
Well, and apples trees also, to do it well, it needs to be somebody who's.
the prunes
Yeah.
apple.
Yeah, well, and then, you know, say submit qualifications, you know, of your firm, and if you're using subcontractors, you know, for any of these tests, submit their qualifications and, you know.
If the invasive species plan is $2,000, then that's just 3 phone calls and 3 price quotes.
Right.
So,
And I feel like we have the money to deal with that.
you can do that before you even go to CPA, you could just do that now.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
How much will that delay us? Because we're gonna have to wait now until summer, right? For them
Yeah.
to interpret
But
what's out
really,
there.
we shouldn't be doing the tree removal, I mean, it'd be best to do it on frozen ground.
And we're not
So
gonna
we would.
How long
look
running
into
right
that
around the
next
brush
winter.
hog would be better if the ground was frozen to
So,
protect everything
I was
else.
gonna say, to prevent erosion.
When are the next, like, how often is the CPA? up?
4 times a year is kind of the
Okay.
window, so.
I mean, and you could also put the request in, there's no timeline, you don't have to spend the money. I mean, you can be very honest and say, you know, we're making this request, but the first thing we're gonna do is this invasive species removal, we're using our own money, that's part of our match.
Yeah.
And then we're asking for X, Y, and Z, and then the funding's
We're
there and
starting
ready to
January.
go. For when you're ready to go, when the invasive species stuff is done, then you can just phase into that next thing, cause the money's already there and you've got it already set up, rather than
Maybe the
having
way to
to
do it.
delay 3 months to go through the request process.
I guess I'm thinking though, if we knew what species were there and how bad they were, we could know whether we wanted volunteers to do it or whether we wanted,
I think his equipment on this, the multi-floor roses, they're huge, I think.
Yeah.
They're big.
yeah.
You should ask Lathrop and see what they think.
They
They would
did
do-
Politan and volunteers,
Yeah.
I bet they would help us.
Yeah, they would.
maybe.
I would.
Kind of focused on their own property, but.
Yeah, they've got a huge
But they don't have any
project.
money
Yeah,
to
but those ladies,
work
they just
out,
do.
they.
But wasn't this part of their bigger map plan that they came in and showed us where they're trying to create that corridor? Yeah, so they might be totally into this.
I'll ask.
So do you, does someone have time to start working, it's Jamie, right, who,
I would do the CPA. Jamie, I'd like to keep her as the administrative person for
Okay.
CPA, so if, I'd like to try to keep her separate and out of it, like I have her just do the administrative stuff and
Okay.
then keep sort of the applications.
Okay.
If they have to, so I'd be happy to work with you on it and we can work on it together.
is that?
Cool.
I just volunteered, is that okay?
That's
Yeah.
fine.
And then, we can have Jamie take a look at it and give us feedback, but I don't like to have her be advocating on
Okay.
behalf of projects. I'd like her to be more of a neutral
Okay.
party in the room,
Let
so.
me know if you need help.
Okay.
Maybe we can all.
It's not that, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now that we have a budget and sort of a plan, it'll be fairly easy to put together.
Should I start looking at it, putting it together and?
If you'd like to, and then I can fill in the gaps, that's fine.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay. So, not to be rude, but.
So do you wanna try to shoot for the March date? It's in
Yeah.
2 weeks, but.
I have February vacation. It's March 2nd, is that right?
I think that's what
What
Jay
is it,
said.
Jay?
Yeah, March second is the next one, and then it would be, 6/1 would be the following one.
Is it Thursday?
It's usually Thursday evenings. Third Thursday.
Those are the days that they're due, that may not be the day they're due. We'll get the application after the meeting, we'll take a look at it when the due
Perfect.
dates.
Great, thanks, Jen.
Okay, so, thank you. And thank you. So we've received, updates. Paul Street Extension, Jillian Estates. We have received, where's the? Okay. So Jillian Estates, Lot 6, they installed stairs for the deck and the erosion control barrier is intact. And the outlet of the stormwater system is stable. Any updates on Pleasant Street Mills?
Still waiting for as-built.
Okay. Any signs of activity at 15 Cottage Street?
Nothing that I see.
I haven't received any response from Terry Smith about the Oxbow boating access as request for certificate of compliance. 184 Northampton Street, seems the same.
Yes, there's shut down for now.
Okay, Lathrop, they're shut down for the season. Williston Northampton School cross-country running trails.
Well, stable, should be set.
City of East Hampton Ashwaubenon Pond, that's all set for the year. Loven Properties, we have 2 updates. January 27th and February 3rd. So they've continued to work on access to the site. Jay, have you stopped by the site
I
anytime?
haven't been there in 2
recently?
weeks.
So I guess there's a photo in this one, in the January 27th, that shows some of the debris, the tree clearing debris falling outside the erosion control
Okay.
barrier. So I guess if you have,
Sure,
not gonna
it's
see
not
anything
see it
now.
right now, but I think they're not working right now. I think they pulled out just before these past storms. I think he pulled his equipment out of there.
There was something in an email that said something about they pulled their equipment out to work on other projects.
Probably.
And he was using this as fill-in. If the weather was nice,
Mhm.
he was gonna work on this, but if he had real things to do, he was gonna work on those.
And not have 2 feet of snow on that.
Yeah, well, right now, I think it's kind of not practical.
Alright, and we have not received a recorded copy of the Cumberland Farms order of conditions yet,
Nope.
but it was sent to them.
Is that small snow?
So this is gonna be their road.
So I will look up.
Now that we're talking about this, I actually just, I moved to go out of order.
No.
What, weren't we expecting something on 161 Northampton Street by now? Did we get it, and we just missed it at the last meeting?
No, we need to follow up with Mr. Boyle. Mr. Boyle,
He was gonna
had
come back to us
from
and
the,
we haven't heard
Yes.
from him.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
I think they may have missed their compliance deadline.
Okay, I'll send an email. All right, general business, shared conservation agent with town of Southampton, update from Commissioner Ryan.
Do you wanna start?
No, you take it.
We did have a meeting just to go over more of the, how the 2 towns are going to work, cities are gonna work together as far as the contractual, who gets paid, how it gets paid, and it seems that East Hampton's gonna take the lead in it. But I guess there was some concerns from Southampton about the timing of funding, because of things they have going on in their town. So it may not get funded till spring of 2018, is that what we're saying as a,
Well, so the contract from the state was set to expire at the end of December, which meant that the way that the grant was set up was that a portion of the funding was to, for consultants, PVPC, to help negotiate the agreement between the two municipalities. The other portion of the funding was to pay the agent, who was part of the salary. So, both communities agreed that they currently don't have funding under this fiscal year request to pay for the portion of that funding. So East Hampton and Southampton, they both couldn't make it happen under this fiscal year, so they agreed that starting in FY18, July of FY18, that's when the cities and the town would each have funding to pay for salary.
but there might be money available?
But their money is
funding
available
for it.
under the grant, so,
Right.
so the timing is still trying to get hashed out of when the hire date would actually be for the agent. So the hiring date would likely be sometime within this fiscal year, because the grant will cover it. And the grant was extended until June 30th of 2018.
We had a tentative hiring date of October of 2017.
So these details are still being worked out, between the two municipalities and PVPC.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. That's what it is. So, correspondence, we received a request for certificate of compliance. We also received an email regarding 77 Clark Street from Bernard Gall, requesting a determination if this is a buildable lot. Mr. Gall then sent a portion of an assessor's map or similar. It's this little nugget, very small parcel. So, this is Clark. Apparently just before that big open field with the red barn in the back.
Oh, okay. Near East Street. Yeah?
Yeah. the streets and everything.
Okay.
So, he emailed the conservation's email, I replied copying Jessica Allen and Mark Stinson at DEP, informing him that, the parcel appears to be partially or entirely within the 200-foot riverfront area of Brickyard Brook. And as such, the Wetlands Protection Act applies, as does review by the East Hampton Conservation Commission. I know additional wetland resource areas and or buffer zones may also be present. But that in order for the Conservation Commission to make any sort of determination, Mr. Gall would first have to apply to us with either a request for determination of applicability or a notice of intent, and that's how we determine whether or not whatever is being proposed complies with the riverfront area performance standards in the regulations. And that was sent on February 8th, and there has been no further response other than Mark Stinson replying, saying, I think all of it is in the 200, we'll need to see when lot was recorded.
What was the date that you sent that out?
I replied to Mr. Gall on February 8th.
Yep. Thank you.
So, correspondence.
I see the
Mm-hmm. Clark? No, Clark goes from that funky Cottage Street
Right, church.
intersection.
Yes.
But it's the opposite end, it's the East
That's
Street.
Yeah,
the
it's-
road, so I
it's
think
further
it's
down.
Columbus Park here.
It's not the 20.11, it's the 21?
20.1, no, 20
So it's right.
So if you flip the page, it shows a very small lot.
60-foot frontage.
Well, that's not the concern.
No, I understand
Well,
that.
Yeah. So just to confirm and clarify, the riverfront area is a resource area itself, and it has very detailed performance standards. And one of the requirements is a review of alternatives.
I still haven't been able to figure them out.
So if you propose a project, within riverfront area, you have to, the type of project and when the lot was recorded dictates, what type, the breadth of your scope, your alternatives analysis, so, whether or not you cite it within the riverfront area at all, did you record the lot after, and did you create your own hardship, and if so, stuff like that.
Create your own hardship?
Yeah, did you subdivide your land in such a way that you created you should
Lot
have
that was
been aware
unlivable.
of, right,
And that's not a
Inside.
problem.
no,
It's 1996.
96.
Yeah.
So I think the law was recorded before then, but that's for the applicant to demonstrate.
And then if he's thinking residential, if it's single family, it has to, you only look at alternatives within the same lot,
Right.
right? So it's,
But you still have to be at least 100 feet from
Right.
the median lot high water line. And then it's 5,000 square feet or 10%, whichever's greater, of the riverfront area on the parcel. So there's a limit to your total footprint of site, disturbance within riverfront area, not just for your initial project, but in perpetuity.
What's the dimension on this?
24 by 40.
So, okay, so that came through, it went back out, nothing further has transpired. So, move on to meeting minutes, January 23rd, 2017, stay caught up.
So there's one parentheses there, so why is that?
Oh, ordinance, East Hampton Stormwater Management bracket ordinance permit. Do we need
That's- Because it's titled the East Hampton Stormwater Permit, but it's under the East Hampton Stormwater Ordinance.
to? Okay, so that's, we intend for those. Great. I move that we approve the minutes.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
You were here.
Sorry.
Retract that aye.
Mine wasn't fully in it, so it didn't count.
All right, so,
Move to adjourn.
second.
well, I guess before
Something else.
we table that for a moment, Mr. Courtney, do you have anything you'd like to discuss?
Move to discuss.
Okay.
I looked at him when we had public concerns, he just smiled at me.
Excellent.
I assumed that was a
Okay.
good thing.
All right, I apologize. There's a motion on the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Abstaining.
All right.